Hello and welcome to the second episode of SportsDay Rangers, a spinoff of the weekly SportsDay Insider podcast powered by the Dallas Morning News. And I'm John Blake.
And I'm Evan Grant.
Well, obviously, we're not at the Dallas Morning News spacious studios in downtown Dallas this week. I'm at my lovely home office here, and you can see the pictures on the walls with the front pages from the Morning News after the Rangers won the World Series. And Evan is on the road with the team in New York.
I am. I should be out experiencing the city right now, but I am sitting in my hotel room, and we're about to talk Rangers.
And on this week's podcast, we're going to talk about a 5-2 homestand. I want to mention the defense a little bit because it's been stellar, and as has the starting pitching. And we'll get into the offense and the bullpen just a little bit. We're delighted to have former Ranger All-Star Mark Teixeira with us, especially this week playing the Yankees. He was a stellar Yankee, of course, after his time in Texas. And then on a archive segment, we'll talk about the longest winning streak in Rangers history.
There's a lot of stellars there, John.
Well, it's a very stellar week. So if you want to interact with the show, you can find each of us on X. I'm, as always, Ranger Blake. And again, it's not all about uniform colors and Lexus parking. And Evan is at Evan_P_Grant.
If you missed our first episode, you can find it in the SportsDay Insider podcast feed. We talked to Rangers Hall of Famer Michael Young about the in-season change at hitting coach and how I can take all of the credit for setting up the stage for his return to the organization in a story that also features clowns. You can also reach out to the Dallas Morning News on any of the paper's social media channels, and again, find the podcast in the SportsDay Insider feed wherever you consume podcasts.
So before we start, I would like to go back to, I was reading my Saturday paper, and in the opinion section of the Dallas Morning News under Three Cheers, Evan got a shout out from a fan in Dallas and Lake Highlands for using the word somnambulant in a column about the Rangers offense, I believe. If you don't know what somnambulant means, I looked it up in the dictionary. It means resembling the characteristics of a sleepwalking person. So I think Evan might have some personal experience in that regard. But Evan, where did you come up with this word that has apparently shaken the linguistics, the linguists, I should say, of the Metroplex?
Well, I'm very talented in that way with my 50-cent words. I'm still trying to work in falderall into a column before the end of the season. But I thought somnambulant was a good way to discuss this offense as it had performed for the first 40 games or so of the season. It was sleepwalking. It wasn't functioning. And rather than just say not functioning, always be more colorful when you can, John.
Well, that was very nice. It was quite a shock when I was eating my oatmeal on Saturday to see that. So let's get into the week. As we said, the Rangers were 5-2 last week. They took care of the Colorado Rockies like the rest of Major League Baseball has over the first quarter of the season. And then they split the first Silver Boot Lone Star Series matchup with Houston, going 2-2, and pretty much holding the Astros, with the exception of a couple of innings, pretty much down offensively. The Astros, with a pair of three-run homers on Friday and Sunday, won a couple of games. But where do you think we are? I mean, the starting pitching continues to be amazing.
Yeah, it's the best in the American League. And I know you want to talk about the defense, and the defense, I think, leads baseball in defensive runs saved, according to Fangraphs. And to cut to the chase there, right, what do we always say? Pitching and defense wins you championships. And so I think from the Rangers' perspective, that's been a really good development that's been a little bit overshadowed by the lack of offense. I think that it was really important for the Rangers to come out and show this Astros team that it does have the better starting pitching finally for a change. You know, last week when this series started, I think I went back and I looked at since 2017, since the Astros AL West dynasty began, I think they ranked third in baseball in starting rotation ERA, and the Rangers ranked 28th. So it's been a great, great disparity there. And I think that when you line it up, that Jacob deGrom goes and Nathan Eovaldi, your 1-2 guys go right in order out of the gate. It's a really formidable or formidable. I don't even know my own words anymore, John. It's a really formidable 1-2 punch. The one thing I'll say is, you go back and look at this weekend, and we can break down the weekend any way you want, but when the starting pitcher exited the game over those 4 days, I think they had, at that point, pitched 18-plus innings, maybe more than that. Houston had scored 2 runs. Now, Leiter ended up having 2 other runs charged to him after the home run by Paredes, but my point is the Astros had 2 runs against Rangers starting pitchers at the time that they had left the game, and I don't know if that is all about the Rangers or if it has something to do with the Astros missing Yordan Alvarez, but that's an impressive number right there, and it should bode well for success against Houston.
Well, as you talked about, I guess we'll talk about the defense a little bit here and then maybe get back to the bullpen. I have been so impressed with the defense, and again, I'm not a scout or anything, but just watching this team play defense for the last 20-plus games especially. They've got 1 error in their last 11 games. They rank second in the American League with an overall fielding percentage of .989. The outfield's made 2 errors all year and saved several hits over the weekend. Josh Young, has been great at third base in terms of picks. Jake Berger's done a nice job at first base. And then the outfield of Langford, Carter's now on the DL, and then Garcia in right. And then you watch the Astros, right? And the game on Friday night, their starting pitcher, Blanco, throws a ball into center field. It cost them really 2 runs in that situation. But it's amazing when you watch a good defensive ball club and how you can save runs, all over the field. And that includes the pitchers, too.
Yeah, 100%. Look, just to quote this stat again, and I know, you being an old school guy, you like to talk about fielding percentage and all of that stuff, but hey, we're new school here, John. We're talking about defensive runs saved according to Fangraphs, and as the Rangers head into the Yankees series, they had 39 runs saved, which was the most in the major leagues by 9. It wasn't really a close second. Toronto was second with 30, and the Astros had 10 runs saved. And you do look around the field, and you look at Adolis Garcia, who is moving significantly better than he did a year ago. And on Thursday night alone, made 2 really impressive catches. And I thought the second catch that really preserved the shutout at that point, where he broke in on a ball on a sinking line drive on contact. It was a great read, and I thought I was over complimenting it, but I went back to Bruce Bochy and I went to a couple other people, and no, they were of the same mindset. It was just a phenomenal read on Adolis' part. He made another catch on Saturday where he took a double away. I think that ball probably would have hit the top of the fence. He wasn't sure if it would have gotten out, but he's been the biggest, I think, guy who has stepped his game forward this year significantly because he's moving better. Then you look at the other corner and you look at Wyatt Langford, and at this point in time last year, he was still pretty much a full-time DH. Hadn't really played the outfield in the big leagues. Now, he obviously came up as an outfielder in Florida, but had not played in games where you've got that third set of seats and the lights and all of that. I think he's made tremendous strides in left field. And to this point where I've been lobbying a little bit, like if Evan Carter were to struggle or if Evan Carter were to be hurt like he is right now, could you play Langford in center field if need be? And I think the Rangers could get away with that. I think also
if you do that now, would you play Smith in left, and with Seager still out for the time being, Duran at short? Would you put a Haggerty or a Pilar in left, or how do you see that?
I mean, I think the only way you do that is if you've got a full assortment of healthy players, Then you look at the possibility, if Evan Carter were to struggle or get hurt, could you put Langford in left and Josh Smith, or Langford in center and Josh Smith in left, with the infield obviously being at full strength? If you could do that's just a way to get Josh's bat in the lineup every day when you do have a healthy lineup. But I think right now, and the other part of that is, that way if you do decide that you're going to use Langford in center field on some of the days, say when Evan Carter can't play, say against a left-hander, then all of a sudden Wyatt's not switching back and forth. But I think the Rangers are very happy with Evan Carter in center field, and he's looked great out there when he's been healthy. But this quad issue that has come up is just another reminder that with his build and with some of the issues that he has, that's going to be, it seems like it's going to be a constant battle to make sure that he's fresh and healthy.
Well, speaking of health, let's touch on this quickly here before we get to our guest. Health in the bullpen. It took a little bit of hit this week. Luke Jackson first had a hiccup. He's back. Chris Martin looks like he's probably going to be down for the count for a while. What do you do here with Martin, who had been your primary setup guy? Armstrong has pitched well. Jacob Webb has pitched well. Robert Garcia, obviously, who gave up the 3-run homer yesterday, and not a great matchup there. But what do you see of that happening?
Well, I think the immediate issue, right, is Chris Martin. As we're taping this at the outset of the week, I expect that by the time this drops, Chris will be on the IL. I think even though when I spoke to Chris Young at the beginning of the week, he seemed pretty optimistic about this, I think the Rangers were going to act cautiously. This is 2 instances in a week's time where he's had issues, and the Rangers can't afford to keep having that happen. So I think they're going to be without him for a little bit of time, and I think this is an opportunity. And in Chris Young's parlance, every challenge is an opportunity, and it's an opportunity for Bruce Bochy to go to some of those other guys in high leverage situations. I think if there's anything that's happened with this bullpen, and it's been better than I expected, and guys have been willing to pitch in whatever roles they've been given, but I think that they've worked hard. The Garcia, Young, Jackson, they've all worked hard, and I think that this week is maybe a reminder that, hey, you've got to use all the different arms out there that you've got in some leverage situations. I think the other thing with the bullpen that the Rangers could explore is, you've been remarkably healthy in the starting rotation to this point. I'm trying to knock on wood for the Rangers there, but you are making progress with John Gray and Cody Bradford in the rehab from their injuries. Kamar Rocker is about to start a rehab assignment, and I think that it's entirely possible when it's all said and done, the Rangers could look to one of those 3, maybe even 2 of those 3, to potentially fill out that bullpen as needed.
We'll see what happens. And again, you can never have enough pitching depth, so we'll see. So we're going to move on now. Every week on the podcast, we want to chat with a player who knows plenty about both sides of the Rangers series this week, and that's Mark Teixeira, and we'll have him coming up. We're happy to have on today's SportsDay Rangers podcast Mark Teixeira, Rangers first-round pick in the unbelievably 2001 free agent draft, 5th pick in the country, made his big league debut in 2003, 14 seasons with the Rangers, Braves, Angels, and most notably the Yankees. 409 career home runs, that's 5th all-time among switch hitters, almost 1,300 RBIs, 4th highest slugging percentage all-time among switch hitters at .509, in over 1,800 games with a WAR of 50.5, 3-time American League All-Star, 5-time Gold Glove winner, and a 5-time winner of a Silver Slugger Award, now living in Austin, Texas. So, Mark, welcome. We appreciate you doing this with Evan and I. We're trying to give this a go and see how it goes.
It's great to be here, guys. Brings back a lot of good memories seeing the two of you.
So I was going to ask the first question, and I'm just going to start kind of at the beginning because it was, that first spring. You played one minor league season, 2002, and you had a few injuries, but you came on finished up in Double A, then went to the fall league, came to spring training the next year, and position-wise, it was an interesting situation because Rafael Palmeiro was still here playing first base. So you played a lot of third to start out, and then you played, I went back and looked, and I had forgotten how much outfield you played early in the season before you kind of became the regular first baseman, 2 months into the season, probably like that. And I'm just curious, we talk about Rafael Devers and position changes and everything. How did that all go for you, and what was kind of your mindset, coming into really your first camp? Well, you had 8 home runs. I mean, you had a great spring, but how was that mindset for you coming in?
Well, it was a total whirlwind, John. I mean, I think I would be lying to myself if I didn't say that it was I was on the Rangers because of my bat. I came to spring training as a below average third baseman, and like I said, I'll be honest, I was a below average third baseman. We had Hank Blaylock at third. I'm kind of an average athlete. I'm not the fastest guy on the team. Don't have the best arm on the team. So Buck Showalter, he's trying to figure out a way to get me in the lineup. And so he basically said, get a first baseman's glove. I'd never owned a first baseman's glove up until that point. Get an outfielder's glove. Hadn't played outfield. I played shortstop and third base my entire life growing up. So Buck was very honest with me and just said, listen, Tex, we need you in the lineup. Get 3 different gloves, and when you show up to the ballpark, we'll tell you which one to put on for batting practice.
Well, I'm more concerned about in 2003. It was also a really veteran team, right? You had a number of veterans there, and look, I mean, we can go through your entire career with the Rangers those 5 years because it was a really interesting time in Rangers history. But how difficult of a break-in period was 03 as you're trying to master all those different positions, but also trying to, get a little bit of I guess, mentorship from some of those veteran guys?
Yeah, it was a crazy first year, Evan. We had a team that wasn't very good, as most people remember. We lost 91 or 92 games, I believe, that year. We had a lot of veterans that got traded halfway through the season. We had a lot of veterans that were maybe towards the end of their career and looking for a place to win, and we weren't winning. So it wasn't the happiest clubhouse, if everybody remembers. That being said, I wanted to be a big leaguer. I was 22, 23 years old. I just wanted to play in the big leagues. And I woke up every single day in 2003 as a Major League Baseball player. And that was really cool. And so while it wasn't easy, maybe with, teammates basically telling me, hey, Tex, you need to play outfield because Rafi's the first baseman. And the outfielder, I'm going out to the outfield to shag balls. Hey, Tex, you need to go to third base. I'm the outfielder. It's like nobody wanted me. None of the veterans wanted me because they saw me as competition. But, Michael Young, Hank Blaylock, Kevin Mensch, we had some young guys that were really fun to be with. And, we kind of stuck together, that young group of guys in 2003 and ultimately got through that tough season and had a really fun, great season in 2004.
Well, we're not going to go through this year by year, but I do want to touch on 2004 because it was such a strange year, right? For Michael, it was probably the strangest because he gets to camp and all of a sudden he looks around and nobody's playing shortstop that first day of ground balls. What was that entire atmosphere like? And we've made a lot out of the story of Michael walking into Buck and saying, I'll go play short, but tell me your version of it as a young player alongside him.
Well, I walked into Buck's office as well and said, Buck, I'm willing to play shortstop. And he laughed at me and he threw me out of the office. No, but seriously, we had the best player in baseball in 2003, Alex Rodriguez. I tell everyone to this day, the best single season of baseball, just from a talent, from a preparation, I was in awe on almost a daily basis, was 2003 when Alex was on our team with the Rangers. So we trade the best player in baseball, and it creates a void that Michael, man, I give him so much credit. He would have been on the path to be a Hall of Fame second baseman, was a perennial all-star second baseman. He decided to, what's best for the team, go and play short. And I think, listen, shortstop's a more fun position to play than second. So I think he really enjoyed, actually enjoyed playing short more. And even though maybe for his career or stats or all-star game wise, whatever it might be, maybe it wasn't the best switch for him. I think Michael really enjoyed playing short.
So 2004, Rangers come agonizingly close. 2005, 2006, it kind of goes sideways a little bit. And then we get to the 2007 season. And I don't, what were your anticipations? And, as it's getting towards July that year, what kind of were you thinking before you got traded to the Braves?
I knew I was getting traded, John. I mean, listen, the business of baseball can be tough sometimes. I wanted to stay in Texas. After the 2005 season, I had a pretty good season and kind of established myself as a perennial all-star type player. I wanted to sign a long-term. I just wanted to sign a 10-year deal with the Rangers. That never came. 2006, we didn't play very well, 500-ish team. 2007, we went into spring training, and I knew unless we were really good, unless we were going to make a postseason run, I knew I was getting traded. And it was the right move, by the way. It was the right move for the Rangers. Looking back, obviously it was the right move for the Rangers, considering all the talent that they got. But, it hurt a little bit to know that I wasn't going to be with the Rangers long term. I loved living in Texas. I mean, my nickname's Tex. It's perfect, right? I lived in College Station as a kid for 3 years. I grew up an Aggie fan. I wanted to be a Texas Ranger for life. And when I realized early into that season, when we went from, all right, let's go get him in spring training to we kind of stink, I knew I was getting traded. And that was tough to swallow, but it's the business of baseball.
The one time Tex and I really enjoyed covering Tex. I enjoyed giving him a bunch of crap because he's a Georgia Tech guy and I'm a Georgia guy. But one time we had a little bit of an issue was right around the trade deadline when Mark did not want to get drawn into all of this, and it was difficult, and I completely understood that. But I still remember waiting outside the hotel in Cleveland the day you were traded to try and track you down. And it really was kind of a admission on the Rangers' part that this player that they had drafted, and I don't even want to say developed because you spent so little time in the minor leagues, but this great player that had been drafted and came through the system, they were kind of acknowledging, hey, this whole experiment didn't work. And I'm just, as you're leaving the hotel in Cleveland that day, what are your memories of that, and what's going through your head? Because you are going back to Atlanta in that situation.
I remember that so vividly, Evan, and I feel bad that I blew you off because
I know it probably stays with you to this day, right?
18 years later, I feel bad. I didn't want to say something I was going to regret. That's why I didn't talk to you. Because I had so many great memories playing for the Rangers. I had so many friendships, still friends today. That's why I moved back to Austin, right? So many great friends in the Texas and the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I didn't want to say something out of emotion that I was going to regret. So now, at the same time, I was really excited to go play for the Atlanta Braves. I went to college at Georgia Tech, as you talked about. Ton of family and friends in the Atlanta area. So on the one hand, I was really sad, and it was kind of the inevitable happened. I didn't want to, let the emotions get the best of me. But also, I didn't want to sound like I was so happy to leave as well. And so it was just a tough time. It really was. And by the way, I got traded again. I went to Atlanta. I loved Atlanta. I got traded again. I mean, twice in 2 years, I had to go through that same, hey, I'm playing so well that my current team can't keep me anymore. And all the national, pundits or analysts, whatever, are saying, Tex is going to the Yankees. Everyone knows he's going to the Yankees. It's inevitable. And so, whether it was the Rangers, the Braves, or the Angels, it seemed inevitable that I wasn't going to stay long-term with any of those teams. But I had a blast playing for all three of them.
Hey, one other thing I wanted to touch with you on is kind of this dichotomy, right? You do sign the deal with the Yankees. You win that World Series the first year. It's a great moment for you. And then 2010, and you and I have never really dived into this at all, but we get into the ALCS, and you're playing against a bunch of your buddies that you grew up with, and then you get hurt in Game 4, right? And you don't play the last 2 games, and you're watching this from the other side of the field. What's going through your head at that point? Because I know you're disappointed that you're not going to repeat and that you're hurt, but what are you seeing on the other side of the field?
It was so weird. It was so weird. I mean, playing in the old ballpark in Arlington, which I still consider home. I was at the All-Star game last year doing some stuff for the Rangers. We had some events next door at Choctaw now.
You had so much fun at that thing last year, too. You came up and gave so many guys big hugs. It was so good to see.
I loved it. And so I'm playing wearing pinstripes, actually, wearing the road grays, but, wearing the Yankees uniform in my old home, playing against my buddies. It was just weird. And obviously really upset that I got hurt and we didn't win that series. The Rangers were the better team. Like at the end of 2010, our Yankees team was beat up, and we were getting older, didn't have a lot of pitching left. And so I kind of tipped my cap to that Rangers team. I thought they were going to win the World Series that year. I thought that team was so good. But really happy for Michael Young. I mean, Michael's still one of my favorite people to this day. Probably the teammate or one of the teammates I keep in touch with the most. Brian McCann, Mark DeRosa, some of those other guys that I played with on other teams. But, man, just so happy for Michael when it was all said and done. And even though they didn't get to finish it off and win the World Series that year, being able to see Michael have that type of success and the Ranger fans, happy for the Ranger fans, because it had been a long time coming for the Ranger fans and everyone in the Dallas area.
Texty, you did, and before we let you go, I want to wrap up on the baseball talk just with one thing. You did some stuff for ESPN. You were outstanding. And listen, I don't think you get enough credit for whatever the talk show bit was that you did while you were with the Yankees. That thing was
foul
hilarious.
Territory.
It was.
Thank you.
It was so out of character and so over the top. It was so perfect for you. I wish I could hear a clip of it right now. But you walked away from the ESPN thing. You're not doing a whole lot involved with baseball right now, and I assume that's because you wanted to raise your family. You've got a son about to graduate and go off to A&M and be an Aggie. Do you have any intentions or desires to get back into the game?
Absolutely. I feel like I'm at halftime in my life, Evan. To your point, I worked for 4 years at ESPN after I retired, and I loved it. I really, really enjoyed ESPN. I joked with people, if I knew I could go to the All-Star game and World Series every year, I would have retired earlier and started working for ESPN. It's hard as a player to get to those two places. So I loved my time at ESPN, but I knew that I missed the first half of my kids' lives. And I knew I only had a few years left where they were in the home. So we decided to move back to Texas. Like you said, we're down in Austin now. I finished my degree at Georgia Tech, which was really cool. And I'm kind of at the halftime of my life. I would love to get back into baseball, more on the ownership side, more on helping an owner navigate the business and baseball side of things. I feel like I've seen both sides. I've seen, how to build franchises the right way or the wrong way. I've seen from the ESPN side, I've talked to a lot of smart executives, talked to a lot of smart owners and how they look at things. So I think my experience would help on that end. But I also want to serve, whether it's with my church, whether it's in public office. I've always thought about maybe running for public office. As crazy as that sounds, I do feel like the second half of my life will be in some sort of service, and whether that's serving an owner or an ownership group or serving my community. I want the second half of my life to be meaningful. And when all of my kids are out of the house, like you said, I've got one on his way to A&M. I've got a senior next year, and then I've got a freshman next year in high school. So 4 years, I'm a free agent. So, if you have any openings, Evan, please let me know, and I'll be ready to go to work.
Yeah, after I win the lottery and start to purchase a share of a club, you'll be my first call. Mark, before we let you go, we're going to try and give people a little taste of off the field, and we're calling this Better Get to Know a Ranger Legend. So we've got 5.
I will say up front on this that these are Evan's questions. I did not contribute to this little.
You guys remember, I played in New York for 8 years. I've heard it all. There's nothing you can throw at me that I haven't heard or at least can't be prepared for.
So we've got 5 questions here. Some of them may have been stolen or borrowed from the Colbert questionnaire. But Mark, are you ready? You ready to tackle this?
I'm ready to go.
All right. What's the best sandwich?
Chicken Parmesan with a toasted bun.
Have you ever personally asked for an autograph that's not for a charity that you're running, but asked somebody for an autograph?
Yes, and the last one was Prince Harry. I did a charity function with Prince Harry and I have his autograph on a baseball, which I don't even think is legal, but I got it.
What's your favorite sports moment that doesn't involve you?
Wow, I love that question. Watching, I would just say watching my kids play sports. That's probably like a dad cop-out answer. I've been to Super Bowls. I've been to national championship games, some great college football games. But, man, watching your kids play sports, there's nothing better.
This is where I insert the line that you've been to Georgia Tech games. I wouldn't call those great college football games. But nevertheless, first concert that you ever went to?
Billy Joel and Elton John at RFK Stadium. I was like 10 years old. My parents took me. It was awesome.
I saw that concert at the Georgia Dome in 1994.
Spectacular.
Spectacular. It is a great concert. Last question.
RFK was not that spectacular at that point.
It was not. And I actually played in RFK when I was with the Braves. Man, that was a rough baseball stadium.
Yep.
Did you not play there in 05 with the Rangers, or did they play in Puerto Rico that year?
No, we played in Puerto Rico in 03.
In 03.
03, yeah. That was a fun series.
All right, last question. Describe the rest of your life in 5 words.
Being there for my family and my community.
7.
Being there for my family. How about that?
Perfect. That's great.
Excellent.
That's outstanding. Mark, thanks for joining us on the Rangers SportsDay podcast.
Thank you, guys.
Tex. We appreciate it. Come see us in Arlington.
I'll do it anytime. This was fun.
Was this painful?
No, this was awesome.
Was it?
I could talk to you guys forever. I enjoy. I had a conversation with a friend this weekend, and he essentially asked, "Is it harder the further you get away from your career?" And I go, "Man, it's way easier because I forget about all the outs. I forget about the strikeouts. All people talk about are the good stuff. Like it is so much fun." And Jorge Posada said that too. He came back and he spoke at one of our charity functions a couple of years after he retired. And someone asked him, like, what's it like being retired? He goes, "It's awesome. I haven't made an out in 2 years." And that's, I haven't made an out in 9 years. So things are good.
So we like to close these podcasts with some history, a little history lesson about the Rangers. And thanks to our loyal viewers from week 1, we've come up with a new name. We're going to call it the Archives in Arlington, a little spin-off on the old ballpark in Arlington, if you remember the original name of the Arlington ballpark number 2. And we're going to go back.
We could almost call it the Parchives in Arlington, but that's too punny for you.
Yeah, I probably couldn't even pronounce that, but
okay.
I could try. So in honor of a couple of things, the Minnesota Twins just finished a 13-game winning streak that ended on Sunday. And the Rangers, of course, had a 6-game winning streak last week. But it was around this time of year, late in May, mid to late May in 1991, the Rangers actually set their club record for the most consecutive wins. It was from May 12th to 27th of that year. The Rangers won 14 games in a row, and they haven't come close to that. The The second most is 12 in 2011. And the club, and for me, this is surprising because this was a very mediocre team, to say the least. When the winning streak started, they were in sixth place. They were 11 and 14 in the then two-division American League. And with 14 straight wins, they got to 25 and 14 and took a one-game lead. Juan Gonzalez, this was his first full major league season. He had 361 during the streak. Ruben Sierra, who was at the time one of the best players in the league, hit 416. But it was really the pitching which was surprising back in the 90s, that contributed to the win. And it was the bullpen and some in the starting pitching. And amazingly enough, Nolan Ryan was on the disabled list the entire time during this winning streak. He'd pitched his seventh no-hitter to start May of that year, but then was on the DL the whole time. Kenny Rogers, who was actually a spot starter that year, went 3-0 in a starting role. But again, it was the bullpen. It went 6-0. And I have a trivia question here for Evan, and that is, already having stated that Nolan Ryan was on the DL during the winning streak, what future National Baseball Hall of Famer won at least one game during the Rangers' 14-game winning streak?
What future National Baseball Hall of Famer won at least one game during that winning streak?
Correct.
This was 1991.
That is correct.
I'm going to go with... Now, it wouldn't have been Blyleven. He pitched for the Rangers in the 70s, right?
Correct.
One Hall of Famer that won a game. I'm going to go with... I'm at a loss.
It was Rich Goose Gossage, who was in the bullpen in 1991, and he won his last game as a Ranger, by the way. It was on May 15th of that year against the Tigers. And speaking of Nolan, he pitched his seventh no-hitter that year, came very close to pitching an eighth no-hitter, which I would have missed, by the way. This was July 7th, 1991. It was the last game before the All-Star break that year. The Rangers were playing a night game at home against the California Angels. And I was going to work the All-Star game, which was in Toronto. So I flew out that afternoon, and I was not at the ballpark on that Sunday night. And I landed in Toronto, and I called back to the press box at the time, Larry Kelly was my assistant, just to check in. He says, well, Nolan's got a no-hitter through 7 innings. And I told Larry, you're pulling my leg, right?
I don't think you said it that way.
Probably not. But then I said, well, let me talk to Bert, Bert Hawkins was the scorer. And Bert goes, buddy boy, that's exactly right. So we get on the shuttle bus to go to the hotel, and again, we had no cell phones.
Why didn't you just follow the game on your ballpark app?
Yeah, right. In 1991, and I was fuming. I said, "Why did I come up here early? I'm going to miss this no-hitter." And I fumed for like 35 minutes. Got to the hotel, raced to the payphone in Canada, which is Bell Canada, by the way, if you didn't know, and Nolan had given up a leadoff single to Dave Winfield in the 8th. He pitched a 2-hitter with 14 strikeouts, put the Rangers at a tie for first place at the All-Star break at 44 and 33. But as Ranger teams were wont to do in the day, they went 41 and 44 after the break to finish in third place 10 games out in Bobby Valentine's last year. So I promise next week this won't have a bus or anything attached to it like the first two have. But that was the longest Rangers winning streak ever, and it holds to this day.
I think before this is all said and done, we're going to have a demonstration of what it meant to have a full-on John Blake fuming incident. I will just say this, before we leave here, that the week that Alex Rodriguez signed with the Rangers, which was at the winter meetings in Dallas at the Wyndham Hotel, and these were in the days before Twitter, obviously. Alex, overnight there had been a report that Alex had kind of come to an agreement with the Rangers. I was trying to get it confirmed. And John and I got into a set two outside of the media workroom in which both of us were yelling very loudly at the top of our lungs. And when it was all said and done, Ken Daly, who was then the national writer for the Dallas Morning News on baseball, came over to me and said, "Hey, I think you're going to have to apologize to John for that whole thing. I mean, we're going to need him. We got to maintain a relationship with him." And I said, "That was nothing. That was another day at the office for us." So we need to be able to demonstrate, besides, the questions in Japanese and all of that, we've got to find a way to demonstrate for the audience exactly what a John Blake meltdown was like.
I don't know if I want to go there, but you got to admit, I was under a lot of stress at that point. So,
You're under a lot of stress at all times.
yes, I was. But anyway, so that's the archives in Arlington for this week. And that's going to wrap up our second edition of Sports Day Rangers. We thank you for joining us.
Hey, if you can't get enough of my opinions and my stupid jokes, you can also hear me with Morning News columnist Kevin Sherrington on Sports Day Insider in the same feed every week. Each week we're featuring Sports Day reporters who are reporting on the top stories in Dallas at that point in time.
It's the second best podcast the Morning News does. So if you have any questions for us, you can ask us on X, and we'll try to get to some each week.
And thanks to Mark Teixeira for joining us this week. It's always great to talk to Tex. We'll talk to you all next week.